Welcome everyone. This is a Craig Clifton Inc. Reading session officially. We wanted to have a children's reading session because one, it's Black History Month, and because our focus is primarily African American low income communities, we felt it necessary to focus on literacy as one of our key pieces. So we have a lot of African American authors in Milwaukee, and they are also African American as well. And so I think it's important that we recognize those that are paving the way to, be advocates of um, literacy in so many different ways. So we have Mrs. Dionna Hayden with us, and she is the author of this book right here. And I think she has a couple other ones along with, I think your children actually write books as well, right?
Yes, one of my oh, she's not 13. She was 13 when we published it, but she's 15 now. So
Oh,
we
nice,
worked on a book
nice.
together.
Yes,
Yeah.
I saw that and I thought that was so nice. And
Thank
so
you.
welcome. So we're gonna get started. And so, when we talk about literacy as a whole, it's such an important topic, especially since COVID and everything, we've been a little bit more restricted, been confined to, computers as our form of communication, and then these video conferencing platforms. So I think it's important that we still have some accountability or responsibility to providing quality content, so that children are able to still read and write and have critical thinking skills, so that when they get older they can do what they need, be stand up citizens. And so I thought this was a really nice start for us to advocate for literacy. So Miss Dionna, if you want to tell us a little bit about um, who you are and what made you decide to take this direction of being a writer and an illustrator.
Okay, I'm gonna give you guys the super short of it because it's a long story. But long story short, I grew up in a non-traditional house where my mom, she was a teen mother, my dad was a teen father. They did not live together, but I was blessed enough to have my grandmother and my mom's younger siblings and, one of her older siblings. We all lived together under this roof. So, my sister and I were raised around a lot of people who were older than us. And my grandmother was, she always was with a book, and it could be like this thick. And like her bookshelf would be just filled with one after the other. And I always was mesmerized about how she was always in a book, and my mother would read to my sister and myself, and we didn't have a whole lot, but she would find a way to get those golden books. I can't remember what they're called, but they used to have like the gold foil design on the side, and my mom would buy the cassette with it so you could see the picture play out in your mind. And so anytime I got a book, even before I could start reading, I was always excited about the pictures, really, because I'm a very visual person and I am a professional artist. So being a kid, the pictures always drew me in. And then the words were like, wow, this is telling me something. So by the time I started reading, I told my mom, I want to illustrate when I grow up. I want to put the pictures with the words. And with me being a kid growing up in the 80s, I didn't see a lot of characters that looked like myself and my sister in my neighborhood, my friends. And my mom, my grandmother, and the influences around my mom's siblings, it all culminated and became this something where they never discouraged me. They always said, you can do it, you can do it. And it didn't matter what our financial background looked like or anything. So I had a whole lot of help, a whole lot of encouragement along the way. And as an adult, I decided it was time to do it, especially around my 30th birthday. It was time for me to move forward and start actually putting the books out there that I wanted to do since I was 6 years old.
That's awesome. I think that's a great point to the fact that, you know, some people think that you can just watch videos or you should just read, but it sounds like it's a combination of both because people learn different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
combining both of those together, it really brings everything full circle. So that's awesome.
Thank you.
Um, and so then what made you decide to write then?
Uh, I guess it's appreciating how it comes together with the pictures. So for me, I've always wanted to do my own thing, and I love literature that's secondary to art. So it kind of went hand in hand like PB and J. It just felt right. And so for me to start this children's book series, I used what I knew in my life because I heard in literature, you write what you know. So for me, I was already a mom of three by the time I was 29, 30 years old. I have a set of twins. They're 15 now, and my son is 13 at like now. But at the time, I thought to myself, man, like, okay, I know I need to write these books, but I need to write what I know. I need to write something that it's personal. Like I want to leave pieces of my world in there, even though I'm reaching out to other people in different ways. So I started loosely writing the books off my kids. So the characters are literally them around that age when I started writing them. And so I just kept them frozen in time because now they're teenagers. They're so much more different than what they were in the book series. And it's nice to keep that part of their childhood fictionalized. So that's how I came up with the series. And also, I wanted to make the series because it goes back to my childhood, how my mother, my grandmother, my aunts, my uncles would sit down with myself and my sister, and they made it an experience. So the books wasn't just reading for the sake of reading, but it was like I felt like we found ways to make it applicable to our lives. So these books that I create, it's the same thing. Like there's some parents who need to broach different topics with their kids, like what is it to change or go through the changes of life, and how do you adapt? So that's how I came up with the first book, Moving Day. It's all about understanding and helping to bring that topic up to the children. How do we relate what we've read to our everyday lives? How do we plug that in? How do we make it where life is easier to take, one piece at a time? Uh, so the first book is about change. The second book is about how do you overcome bullies? So different topics that actually happened in the lives of my children. I was able to fictionalize it and make it where it becomes a topic that parents can bring forward to their kids and keep the conversation going, basically.
Nice. The so the, I'm definitely anybody who has questions, you're more than welcome to ask. I know we were going to do some questions at the end as well. If you would like to ask some questions now, you can put them in the group chat in the chat box as well, or you can wait until we're done with the book reading. So please feel free to ask questions. I think one more question I have is it sounds like family is really um, a driving force to how you became who you are. So would you like to expound a little bit on the importance in that?
Sure. Well, it's like the proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. It's not just one person, it's not just mom, it's not just dad. I think I had the benefit of having a non-traditional home to see that it doesn't matter what background you come from. There's people in our lives every day that can put a piece of the puzzle together that make you a whole and help you become your truest self. So in my situation, it just so happened that I lived with two moms in the house, my grandmother and my mother. So I never called my grandmother grandma. I always called her ma, and I always called my mother mama. So they were like the two primary parents, I would say. And my mom had younger siblings who were much younger than her, but they were old enough to be my older siblings. So I grew up where I got multi-generational learning under one roof. So for me, it started there. And then when I started getting older and I participated in after school programs, went to summer camp, there were teachers, there were like camp counselors. Those people added on to the journey. And I learned so much from each of them that when I look back, I'm grateful that these different people helped me to continue on a certain kind of road, and it enlightened me to learn more about a certain path that I wanted to take. And everybody has that. It's just we just have to be mindful and not just see our mom as just our mom, or our teacher at school just, oh, that's just my teacher. But if we look close enough, there's certain people who hold key pieces of us unlocking something new that we didn't realize that was there, or something that we're looking for in life. That person has a spark that helps you see things a little bit better and say, oh, now I learned more about myself concerning this area because this person imparted that in me. And then as we get older, we pass the baton in a sense. We never stop learning. I believe we're all life students, but the older we get, the more we have the responsibility to take those pieces and pass it down to the next generation. And we also become those pieces of their puzzle, you know? So that's what I love about humanity. That's what gives me hope about humanity. When we do well for one another and we pay it forward, we're helping to mold each other. So it's not about I'm going to get ahead just to say for the sake of me getting on the top of the mountain, but it's more so like I get ahead because I get more insight, and the more insight I get, I can give more insight to someone else who's looking in the same path, or who's on that same trajectory, or looking for answers that maybe it doesn't take them 30 years to find. So that's my thoughts on that, and the importance of the whole of the community coming together and being in position.
Nice. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions right now before we start into the book?
I believe there's a question in the chat. Nevea asked, what was your first ever book name?
That's a good question. First published book was Moving Day, but my first book that I created, I was 9. And what that one was called was Where's Teddy? And it was a really simple book. And like I was in the 4th grade at the time, and I made this book into like a kind of a pop-up book because I had just learned how to do that in like one of my classrooms. And I still keep in touch with that teacher from that time in my life. So that was really pivotal, where I started to kind of learn my craft and learn what I liked, what I didn't like. And I noticed that I loved writing simplistic books. So Where's Teddy is actually a book that my mom, she went to get it laminated, and I still have a copy of it. So it's a 30-year-old book. So that's my first book I ever put together that I actually finished. I still have it. It's not published, but it's mine. So it's one of those things. Is there
Thank
any other questions?
Any other questions? Okay, then we're gonna go ahead and get ready to start with the book. So I'm gonna switch off to you, okay, Dionna?
Absolutely.
All right.
Alrighty. And is everybody seeing? Oh, no, here we go. Is everybody seeing the book okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I can get started. This is my first book of the series. It's called Moving Day. I'm currently working on book number 3, but it is definitely a progression of different moments in the siblings' lives, and they are loosely based off of my children. So their personalities reflect their personalities at that time in history, but I did fictionalize it a bit just so I can make it a teachable, learnable book that parents can discuss with their kids. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Thank you so much for having me. This is a dedication to my grandmother that I mentioned earlier. Her nickname was Boots, and one of my mom's oldest siblings Her name is Lucky, and they both passed on. So this is my dedication to them because they definitely were pivotal in my journey. This is a foreword written by Dr. Marcus Arrington. So whenever you guys have time to read it with your copies, I would welcome you to do it, especially for parents. It's written towards our age bracket. And here's the soapbox section that I would like to read aloud. And this is something that I like to create for parents to keep the conversation going. So it's not just a one time we sit and read, but this is something that parents can apply to the lives of their kids to help them with change. All right, parent soapbox. Change is good. The day my husband Kyle and I became parents was the day our twins Kyla and Devin were born. 2.5 years later, we were graced with our son Christian Alexander. Hours after becoming new parents, my husband shared some profound parenting insight that I never forgot. He stated that every day our children grow older, we would be one day less, it would be one day less, they would be in our nest. Since we knew they were not going to remain children forever, it was best to take all the necessary steps to prepare all of us for this unavoidable change. Change is constant and always happening. With change comes the opportunity to learn or experience something new. Although some changes are not very pleasant, they too give us opportunities to grow and mature. So when change happens, it's best for us to adapt the best way possible. The more flexible we are, the more we can benefit from life's changes that occurs. Children come into this world as clean slates in need of guidance and training until they reach adulthood. In that span of time, our children will experience countless changes. The sooner they learn to adapt, the better. So as parents and guardians, it's really important for us to teach them how, according to what they are able to grasp. Maybe your family is moving, preparing for a new baby, or your child is attending school for the first time. Whatever the situation may be, this book can be a great way to springboard the subject at hand. Making your reading this book help spark a love of life learning for your child and achieving quality time as a family. The end. And now I'm going to turn it back over to you, Tony. I'm just trying to
Thank
find
you.
the button.
Thank you so much for that book. That was a nice book.
Thank you. Okay, I'm trying to find you on this so I can turn it back over.
Craig Clifton Inc.
Okay, there you are.
Yeah.
All right. Make host. Alrighty. Gotcha.
All right. Thank you so much. Does anybody have questions? Any comments about the book?
That was a nice book.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
That was nice.
Thank you.
I liked it too, and change is inevitable. So I think that's important to teach children about.
Thank you.
I did have a question.
Sure.
Now that your kids are a little bit older, how do they feel about the book that you wrote about them?
For starters, they're always kind of shy, like how the average teenager is. Like, they embraced it and they learned to do that a long time ago, but they also understood that the character is not specifically them, even though it's based off of them. So, for example, they're still able to keep their individuality without feeling like they have to live up to these characters in a book. So, as teenagers, when they see it, I always make sure that I always say, Kyla is the character. I'm not referring to you. And one of the teenagers now prefers to be called Kai. Kyla is not the name of choice. They would like to be referred to as. So I always differentiate characters versus real person So it helps them understand that, okay, it's like watching a movie or reading a different book about different characters. Which is why it was good that I like fictionalized it, because I kind of figured the older they get, they didn't want to be like married to the characters. So I always made sure to explain that since they were young, that these are characters, they just so happen to be inspired by you. Any other questions?
How did you have a lot of people growing up that like drew and stuff, or where did you kind of learn that from?
My mom actually used to save my drawings since I was like 1. So as soon as I started learning how to pick something up, it was just naturally ingrained in me to like want to draw something. So she literally she still has some drawings from when I was 1 year old. And I used to explain to her in detail what they were, because I'm a talker. So I was already talking by 1. So I would tell her, this is you and this is this. And my mom just knew to save it because she too has an artistic ability. My grandmother had it. I have other family members that are like multi artistic abilities. Sometimes they don't put it out there. It's just something they do to relax or something. They're just like, oh, it's not a big deal. So for me, it was normal growing up in my family because everybody had some kind of artistic power, and it was a lot of us. So it just came out in different ways. So for me, it was easy to be an artist because I lived amongst many different ones, and my mom would show me some cool, like techniques. Even when I was a couple years old, with her being super young, she still went back to school. She got her degree eventually in college. And one of the degrees she got was it was a graphic design degree, but back then it was commercial art, because this was like back in the early 80s. And there were times where she took me to her class when I was like 2 years old. So I was so immersed in the atmosphere that it was my normal growing up.
Well,
I enjoyed the book very much. Do you only do children books or do you do adult books also?
As far as like novels or like, I don't do grown-up books. That's something I'm still like trying to figure out, because there's a lot of stories that I love. I would love to see stories out there, but I'm starting to understand that maybe my role with grown-up books is more of a role of a producer to help other people get their stories out instead of me being the writer. But it is something that I play with every day, and I ask myself, and I have to like really ask, is this for me to write this story? But there's stories I get that I've already started writing since I was 30 that I've been holding on to because I'm still trying to figure out that piece of the puzzle.
That'll be your change.
Yeah, like I think in the 40s, maybe we will see that. In the 30s, it was all about getting a children's book started. So maybe the 40s would be all about that other piece of the puzzle for the adults.
I think someone else had a question, maybe.
Sure.
Do you write the words, or do you draw the pictures first? And do you always just stick with the pictures that you vision in your mind, or do you end up changing it along the way?
That's a great question. I know every artist, every writer has a different process. For me, this may sound really weird, but I've always been kind of clairvoyant growing up. So I'm able to see things before they happen. Sometimes I have dreams that happen before it happens in real life. And sometimes I could be like daydreaming. It could be like visions. So with the books, sometimes I dream imagery. Sometimes it'll come to, I have to keep a dream journal because sometimes the idea will come in a dream and I will be cognitive and tell myself in the dream, write that down when you wake up, So a lot of times it's imagery that comes to me, and I would hurry up and write it down and record the idea. And then the words kind of develop with the imagery that comes, as long as like, it's kind of weird because with the first book, it took me about 4 years to get the first book out because I had to develop the series at the same time. And I knew what I wanted to do. So I had this skeleton in my mind, what I wanted to talk about. But then eventually the pictures and the words would come. And so as long as I honor that, it's almost like a cheat sheet that I can foresee, or I can like see it, and then I stay true to it, even down to colors or even like the scenery. Some of the pages you may notice that it would have like backgrounds that wouldn't exist in the real world, like the polka dots in that room when they were all shocked and bothered. That felt like the imagery that I would see of in my head. So I would honor that. And that's how it would come together with these odd patterns, these bursts of color that I wouldn't necessarily do if I sat and overthought it. So it would be imagery that I would just see it. And it just made sense to bring it into the real world and out of my head.
I have a question.
Sure.
How many books are you hoping to have a part of this series?
That's a wonderful question. As many as I need to. As far as I'm alive, I always say this, and I mean it with all my heart. I will create children's books until my fingers stop working or my brain stops working. So I'm never going to retire from this. Like, it's a therapy for me. It's not even about making the books for the sake of being a bestseller, but it's a therapy where I'm able to tell a story, and if it helps somebody, that feels good. But even just putting it together is a therapy in itself. So there were times where I would like seriously have a migraine, because I get frequent ones. And I'm not talking about little headaches. I'm talking about migraines that would make you just want to lay down and not move. And there were days where I knew I wanted to do the book, and I had this vision, and I had this the storyboard sketched out, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to work through this headache, because if I focus on this, I won't feel it. And it would literally work for me. So it's actually a healing thing for me too. And one particular day, I remember working for hours, and I didn't feel the migraine. I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel the pain associated with that. It was my way of escaping. And by the time I was done, I felt that release, and it was like, oh my God, I didn't realize I was feeling the pain. So for me, it's a part of my lifestyle, to the point where as long as I'm able to like keep putting the works out there, I'm just going to keep doing it. Like, I could be 87 years old. I'm still going to keep doing it until I feel a release to stop, basically.
I think Steven had a question.
Sure. Are you still there? Oh, okay.
The picture that you was talking about, like when you show your mom.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
So your
Are you
question
talking
is,
to,
I was trying to hear myself. Were you asking the books or the illustrations?
What'd you say?
Great pics, great pictures of the book too.
thank you. I was trying to understand Steven's question too. Are you referring to like the pictures when I was a kid, or are you referring to have I showed my mom pictures of what I have now with the books?
When you was a kid.
Do I have them?
Yes.
My mom does. She keeps a lot of the old art that I used to have.
That was all.
So I'm sorry, can you say that once more?
That's all I wanted.
Okay, cool. I see a question from Craig. Who are some of your favorite book authors? Who inspired you most to professionally write books? Oh gosh, it's such a combination. Some of my favorite authors, like I used to love Silverstein books, or Silverstein. I feel like I'm saying his name wrong, but you know, like where the sidewalk ends. That was one of my favorite books. I love short stories a lot. Like anything with multiple stories inside books, that was my thing. The Giving Tree was one of my favorites, because it actually made me think about being a less selfish. Because I don't know if you kids read that, because that's an old book, but it's really rich, because the Giving Tree is about this tree that literally gave everything to this guy, even from a child to old age. And the guy never acknowledged the tree until things slowed down for him. And I always thought to myself, man, that's deep. I was like 6 years old reading this book. Like, that's bittersweet. It's kind of sad, but it literally had me thinking. So that was one of the authors that I grew up really appreciating. Um, the the author that had me really excited about illustrating though was Ezra Jack Keats. He made The Snowy Day. And what I loved about that book, I don't even remember the words. That's how much I love the book. The illustrations of the little black boy in the red snowsuit, it was so mesmerizing that I just kept staring at the illustrations. And the way he illustrated was he would like make patterns, and he would cut things out and like place it on the illustration. So it looked kind of patchwork like, and it just looks so dreamy. And seeing a character with my skin tone, it was like, oh my God, this exists. So that got me thinking I could do that too. And he's actually not a black author. He was a older white guy. And the interesting story about that was back when he was illustrating, when he first was inspired to create the character, he couldn't even really make the book because it was like that didn't exist in his time. He held on to this book for like 30 years, this idea. And the little boy was a real little boy that he was inspired by. So he took these clips and kept it at his workstation for decades before he actually released the book. So it was like the 1930s when he took the picture of this little boy that inspired him. And he was like, this boy is beautiful. I just want to create a character around him. I'm going to keep this around. And in the 1960s, he released the book, and the book was like award winning. It was like groundbreaking to see characters of color as the star of the book. And this boy lived in this neighborhood, and it was an everyday thing for him. This book, he told a story that didn't have trauma attached to it. And I think as a kid, especially growing up in the 53206 area, I was born in that area. You escape to, that reminds me of my neighborhood in the good parts. And that's what I loved about that book. And that definitely had me just excited about illustrating books. So
That's great to hear, especially the fact that you mentioned 53206 is, that is one of the most challenged areas in Milwaukee. And so to see that great things can come out of 53206 and many others, 53208, 53223. And so just being able to be an example that you can be something coming out of these area codes. So that's great to hear.
Thank you. The name of the book that I just mentioned by Ezra Jack Keats is called The Snowy Day. Prime, Amazon, just like a couple years ago, they released it. Someone asked what was the name of the book. They released it on Amazon as an animation. Boys the Men sings the soundtrack and everything. So I literally felt like a 5-year-old. I squealed with excitement when I saw that they released it as an animation. They brought it to life on the screen, and Boys the Men is singing on there, and everything felt so like, yes, they did an amazing job making it into animation. So I definitely recommend seeing the cartoon version of the book, and definitely getting the print version of the book too. Like it's a gorgeous book, and he didn't make a huge political statement, but just by making that book, he definitely made a huge political statement. So that was an amazing book.
It sounds like with your passion of creativity and illustration, it sounds like you've done like a lot of research over the years about the authors. And so can you share the importance of that, for those that are looking to become future writers or even future illustrators?
Yeah, like one of the things I definitely recommend is, if you are interested in a particular area, no matter what it is, try to find someone or something parallel that's doing the very thing that you aspire to. Like, try not to connect all the dots, because maybe you're interested in that thing. Maybe you're not the one to do it, but maybe that information is going to help you in you creating a new path. Like I said, my mom, she took commercial art, for example. She brought me to her classrooms when I was a toddler. And I remember knowing a little bit on the inside, I belong here, but I knew it was going to be different. I just couldn't put my finger on it because A, I was two, but B, I knew that deep down, I felt a gravitational pull to be there. And so by the time I was 18 years old, the very professor that my mom had that I wanted since I was 2 years old, he was my professor. And it's just go towards where the gravitational pull is, be amongst that kind of company. If it's a certain author that you like, or you feel aspired to a certain production or movie, find out who is the producers, or find out the body of work that's connected to the people behind the scenes. Because when you do the research out of curiosity, pique your curiosity, like actually explore whatever you feel curious about, learn about that thing. It may not connect when right now, but that research is going to store up like food in cupboards, because when that time comes, it's going to make that much more sense. And a lot of times people will ask me, how do I get started? I got these children's books and now I'm ready to publish. And I'm like, whoa, that's a journey that requires you to really understand and get a full understanding to the best of your ability. I never suggest people to go haphazardly into anything. Research is key. Find out what works, find out what doesn't work, find out what new technologies will allow you to do it faster, more efficient. Be open to be a reader, like whether you don't like it or not. Let your curiosity be your guide, and try not to figure it all out. Don't even try to connect the dots, because that will be frustrating. But take it, take the information, tuck it in your back pocket, and it will all start to come together like pieces of a puzzle that you're filling in slowly.
Miss Ferguson said Whistle for Willie is another great one, another great book by kids.
Yes. Beautiful, beautiful illustrations. That's yes. So
Well,
I just love that art style.
Well, we truly appreciate that. Craig Clifton Inc. truly appreciates that you took the time to be with us today, and we appreciate your advocacy for creativity and literacy. Does anyone else have questions before we end our session tonight?
And I can leave the website too, because I know that's information that I can leave behind with you guys.
Wonderful.
Someone asked, was it difficult to publish a book on the business end? Yes. Yes, I'm going to say yes, it was, because when I started to publish, this was like close to 10 years ago when I actually started like researching. And about 10 years ago, things were way different than it is now. So I would say now would be a lot easier than what it was 10 years ago, because now there's more like online processes and you can do it yourself. So for me, I had to find out, how do I get my book out there, but yet still have full control over my creativity? And I didn't want to go to like, and it's no shade, anything against publishing companies, it's not. But I knew that if I had full control over my work, it would be best for me to create my own imprint. And that's where a lot of the hard work did come in, because when you run your own imprint, it's basically like you are becoming your own business. So you have to like give it a vanity name. You have to like clear it by the state. So you are in essence becoming a business. So that's what made the journey a little tougher, because I had to like not only do the business side and establish it as like a business name. And Lucky Boots is my imprint. So there's a website for that. I'm going to put up there for you guys too. But the hard part about doing it solo is you gotta be the one to put all the pieces together. Even if you don't do the exact pieces, maybe you have to hire the illustrator, you're gonna have to hire the graphic designer. I just so happen to be both professionally. Like I do run my own graphic design firm, and that's one of my specialties is illustration and book layout. So you would have to hire the team of people to help you bring it together. So I said this earlier on in the conversation, you got to look at yourself as a producer. You're going to have to like pull these resources together yourself, or link up with people you can trust that can help you be guided in the right direction. And then the financial side, that's definitely going to be something where you would have to be very knowledgeable about, which is why it's good to do a lot of reading. If you can take some courses. Nowadays, it's easier to take a course online. You don't have to full blown get a college degree about it, but you can get information at the touch of your fingertips. Some people give the information out for free. There's beautiful blogs out there with folks who are like willing to share their journey, so you can see, you can pick the bones from the fish, find out what works for you, what doesn't. And that's where the hard work really comes in. It's not just the finished product, but it's, I have to build a foundation to make this thing work and do my due diligence to make sure I'm not just putting something out there and I didn't test the waters or I didn't know that these waters were like murky, or that ain't the right market, or different things like that. So a lot of the hard work is going to come in the research and making sure you find the right people to build your vision, because not everybody is on the same frequency. So the tricky part is just finding artists, designers who can fulfill your vision, finding a marketing team who could fulfill that part of the vision so you can get it out there. So yes, it's a lot. Where can someone follow you, contact you, and where can your books be purchased? I will definitely put the links in the box. One of my websites that has all the links to my business, what I do as an artist, and even what I do as a publisher and illustrator, it is DionnaLHayden.com. And then there's links within that. So I will definitely put that in there. Where you can get the Cookie Fire Rock Kids series, it is CFRkids.com. And where you can go to my imprint website, it is GetLuckyBoots.com. And like I mentioned earlier, Boots is my grandmother. Lucky is my mom's oldest sister, and they both passed on. So I wanted to keep them honored. So that's where Lucky Boots comes from. So it's easy to get luckyboots.com for that. So, oh, thank you. Oh, you know what? I will type in my website name. It's DionnaLHayden.com. Oh, I'm going to put that to everyone. And then I could just start typing in the others as well. Did anybody else have questions? Okay, and I put all the websites in there.
Oh. Well, thank you again. And so just all of the children that participated tonight, they'll get this book. So please make sure, because I'm going to need the addresses to send it out to you. So please email us at ccicommunity@CraigCliftonInc.org, okay? And we'll get it sent out to you. All right? I put that on here now. And so if there are no more questions, Ms. Dionna, we appreciate you and we appreciate the conversation, and the book is amazing. Oh,
thank you. Yep. I appreciate you guys.
All right. Thanks, everybody. You have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Thank you.
See you later. See y'all later.
Stout students, make sure you go to the Facebook page and leave a comment about your experience today, okay?
Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Wow, thank you.